Welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. My name is Gisela K, and today we're going to be looking at this update in the Idaho case. This is relating to Bryan Kohberger, the suspect who was arrested at the end of 2022 and charged with the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, and Madison Mogen. So this is now more paperwork that's been filed, and it's relating to the potential alibi that Bryan Kohberger and his defense team say that he has. Now, it also alludes to them being just a little bit salty about that preliminary hearing that they'd been preparing for, suddenly no longer happening because the state had a grand jury indictment, right, on Kohberger, which is secret. Some people will say a secret grand jury indictment, but I believe grand jury indictments are always secret. So, but yes, and they're like, okay, we were busy preparing all our witnesses and everything for this preliminary hearing, so they're going to talk about that here too. So here it says, this is the latest document, right? Objection to the state's motion to compel, motive of defense of alibi, or alternatively to bar certain evidence. State of Idaho plaintiff versus Bryan C. Kohberger, defendant. Comes now Bryan C. Kohberger by and through his attorney of record, Ann C. Taylor, public defender, and hereby and objects to the state's motion to compel, motive of defense of alibi, or alternatively to bar certain evidence. Idaho Code 19519, ICR 12.1 require an alibi disclosure of a specific location with a specific location and witnesses to so testify. By statutory definition, Mr. Kohberger may remain silent, yet testify that he was not at 1122 King Road on November 13th, 2022. However, in an abundance of caution and recognizing the court has authority to exclude witnesses, Mr. Kohberger has indicated he anticipates corroborating witnesses. When determining whether to exclude evidence due to late disclosure or non-disclosure, the trial court must weigh the prejudice to the state against the defendant's right to a fair trial. Albert 138 Idaho, lots of codes, right? It's error for a trial court to exclude a witness based solely on the late disclosure without analyzing whether the state would suffer prejudice from the late disclosure. In addition to weighing the competing interests at stake, the trial court should consider whether less severe remedies would be sufficient for the untimely disclosure or non-disclosure. We're going to get through this little paragraph, then we'll get back into the news, right? In fact, this is actually all just examples. So let me actually just skip forward to what we want to hear, right? The more layman's term stuff that we could talk about. Mr. Kohberger has long had a habit of going for drives alone. Now remember, it was a few days ago, we had a stream about this potential alibi. And here we were speculating, well, it's probably like, he's going to say, well, he always went for drives. Or he was just always going on runs. He used to go for runs at night as well. Or that he was like, no, I was watching Netflix. You could check. My computer was busy. It was on Netflix. Or say I was streaming or doing something. I thought it could be something like that they could come back with. And so they say, Mr. Kohberger has a long habit of going for drives alone. Often he would go for drives at night. So, if I wanted to poke holes in the defense's case here, although he's innocent till proven guilty, so it's up to the state to prove that he is guilty. The defense doesn't have to prove that he's innocent, right? The point is, if they say Mr. Kohberger has long had a habit of going for drives alone. Yeah, except when he's got to drive from Washington all the way back to Pennysylvania, then he needs daddy. Then he called, Dad, can you come with me? Because I'm going to need you to just help me drive home, even though he's 28, 29 years old, right? Okay. So they say often he would go for drives at night. He did so late on November 12th and into November 13th, 2022. Mr. Kohberger is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. At this time, there is not a specific witness to say precisely where Mr. Kohberger was at each moment of the hours between late night November 12th, 2022 and early morning November 13th, 2022. He was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12th to 13th, 2022. And to that I say, but what about when he returned to the scene, apparently, allegedly, according to the probable cause affidavit, in the morning? Did he also take early morning drives? Did he, the 12 times that they say he was so close to the house that his phone was well, that was speculation. Pinging, connecting to the Bluetooth, I think that was speculation. So pinging in the neighborhood. He was in the area 12 other times that he also, so the drives that he took, was it always around the house? You know what I mean? I'm just saying that would be the argument, right? Or, of course, I think the FBI and the COST team, they're gonna prove a lot with cell phones. The problem, though, is, Kohberger did turn his phone off and it's in flight mode. However, as we saw from the Letitia Stark trial, like with Kevin Clark's timeline and all those details, there's still many ways to track somebody, you know? So, okay, let me continue reading. Let me not get distracted. But he was just going for a drive. Okay, and he went back there in the morning? Why? Why would he go back to that area in the morning? Caught on cameras as well. Why? And then why would he take such a long drive? Remember that long drive? We even flew it. Mr. Grizzly flew. Mr. Grizzly is my husband. If you didn't know, his name is Raphael, but you guys name him Mr. Grizzly, so now we call him Mr. Grizzly. He likes it. So I've asked him, do you like Mr. Grizzly? He's loves Mr. Grizzly. So I'm Mrs. Grizzly, I guess. So we looked at Bryan Kohberger's drive southward, this long drive, and then back to his house, and then back to 1122 King Road, according to the probable cause affidavit. Anyway, long drives, right? Counsel for Mr. Kohberger is aware that case law broadens the definition of alibi with the statutory requirement of a specific location to more broadly include disclosure of information that tends to state the person claiming the alibi was at a place other than the location of an offense. Mr. Kohberger has complied to the extent possible at this time. Corroboration of Bryan Kohberger not being at 1122 King may be brought out through cross-examination of the state's witnesses. At this time, Mr. Kohberger cannot be more specific about the possible witnesses and exactly what they will say. The defense has been hampered by the state's own choices. The state chose, here's the salty part, the state chose a secret grand jury rather than the planned preliminary hearing. Had the state moved forward with a preliminary hearing, the defense would have had the opportunity to develop testimony through cross-examination and witness presentation. Instead, the defense has only received on July 27, 2023, a copy of the testimony the state chose to elicit. Review of such is underway. The defense had to obtain investigative materials from the state's investigative counterparts, the FBI, through an order compelling the state to provide such materials. The state made draft disclosures just 2 weeks ago. The sufficiency of these disclosures is currently being analyzed. So it's kind of you didn't play nice, and neither will we. Obviously not, it's got to have a fair trial. I just mean damn. They do say Ann Taylor is a very feisty, very experienced attorney, and in my opinion, you could tell. They're well, we're going to say he drove around. He drives around a lot of times. Prove us wrong. Because he probably did drive around. He was a night owl, it seemed like, He was vacuuming in the middle of the night. He was, even at his parents' house, he was caught in the middle of the night putting his trash into Ziploc baggies. But when he lived there at those Steptoe apartments in Washington, people said they heard him cleaning and doing all kinds of things in the night, right? So I think he stayed awake quite a bit. Yeah. The Angel Rock says, still doesn't explain how the DNA and knife sheath ended up under poor Madison Mogen. Right, so here they say, corroboration of Bryan Kohberger not being there may be brought out, right? That's what we just read, through expert witness presentation. That analysis is underway. The defense has been diligently working to analyze relevant discovery materials and conduct its own investigation. Notably, the defense had to obtain a court order to receive relevant discovery materials. That delay hampers the defense investigation. And then there's another example of what they're talking about. I'm just going to skip over that for now. If you want to pause and read, you can. I want to get to this. They say the defense acknowledges a vast amount of discovery has been provided. Discovery is received on a nearly weekly basis. The defense reviews and acts on the discovery as quickly as possible, including making appropriate supplemental requests for discovery. The state's motion is an attempt to force the defense to open its work product files and let the state peek inside. The defense has stated all that can firmly be stated at this time. They're like, we're not saying anymore. This is not trial by ambush from the defense. This is the defense requesting information as quickly as possible, yet in some instances face the delay of requesting a court order to obtain information. The state continually uses those opportunities to attempt to force a waiver of speedy trial. That is a decision left to Mr. Kohberger and Mr. Kohberger alone. Mr. Kohberger was out driving alone. Corroborating evidence may come from cross-examination of state's witnesses. Corroborating evidence may come from presentation of defense experts. Mr. Kohberger is aware of and will comply with his continuing duty to disclose information. The court may exempt Mr. Kohberger from further inquiry. Mr. Kohberger requests such an exception at this time. Continued inquiry at this juncture delves into his case investigation as well as protected work product. In support of an exemption, Mr. Kohberger is prepared to provide further detail in an ex parte hearing with the court. That was dated the 2nd of August. Now his next court hearing is a motions hearing on August 18th. That's the next court day. And his trial is supposed to start on October 2nd. Okay. So thank you, mods. If you are in the live stream, guys, if you're watching this in the live stream, thank you, mods, for thanking all the members for joining and everyone supporting the channel. Really appreciate it. Now I want to show you the clip from when I was on Court TV with Julie Grant this morning talking about this Kohberger update, okay?
From Knoxville, Tennessee, a criminal defense attorney who's been part of several Court TV high-profile trials. Greg Isaacs is on the show, and we want to welcome in a brand new guest we are so excited to have. She is joining us from the Netherlands. She's written 4 books on serial killers and hosts the popular YouTube channel Grizzly True Crime, Gisela K. Gisela, great to have you along with us. Welcome to Court TV, and I can't wait to pick your brain about this one. Let me start with you, please. Bryan Kohberger owns this. So now I'm asking the question, okay, now what? Are we getting closer to resolving this case without a trial? Your thoughts on what this might mean, please.
Thank you so much for having me. And honestly, I'm surprised they didn't just go with, well, he was running, because we know he ran at night as well. One of his friends that they interviewed said that he would go for these runs at night. But of course, that means that they know they probably have evidence of him in the car, you know, even though he's innocent until proven guilty. So it's very interesting to me that this is what they're going with. And of course, it's up to the state to prove that he is guilty, because he's innocent until proven guilty. So
that's right. He sure is cloaked in the presumption of innocence, and boy, oh boy, does he have a lot of very bad evidence coming in against him. Greg Isaacs, this is where we want to bring you in, tap into your criminal defense expertise. Okay, the fact that they've owned this, do you think that this is a good move? Why or why not, please?
Terrible move, and I don't know what they've owned. Why would you file a notice of alibi that's not a notice of alibi?
I'm with you, Greg. I'm with you.
Yeah. So what you've done is tried to address the cell phone forensics, the towers, the video that places the car there. But basically, they could have filed a document that says procedurally he was in North America at the time. And I don't know what they accomplished other than they have a deadline to file a notice of alibi, but a very curious motion. But what it did was lock them in terms of reasonable doubt and plausible defenses if they attacked the science in terms of admitting he was alone, driving in a car. Julie, I'm just scratching my head of the notice of alibi that wasn't.
Right. And that's what was weird initially. When we talked about this previously, when the state said, look, per the rules in Idaho, you've got to let us know if you're going to call an alibi witness. You have to be specific so we can do our due diligence and investigate whatever claim you're making here, defense team. And, they weren't specific at all, just saying, we might draw it out through your witnesses, state of Idaho, and perhaps call some experts. The car's not an alibi, but they've got to own this, do they not, that he was in there? Otherwise, they'd have the boogeyman problem like I was describing. Gisela, back to you, please. Who else would have been in that car, right? I think they have to own it, although I do agree with Greg. It's very weird that they're laying it out in the document and making it seem like this, quasi-alibi argument. What do you think, please, if they didn't own that? It would look bad, wouldn't it?
Pretty bad. And you raised a good point earlier in saying, well, what about when you return to the scene? What about that really long drive, as Chanley Painter showed as well there with those locations? Does he take that long drives? We know he's got some odd behaviors at night, because when he was arrested, he was apparently packing things in Ziploc baggies. But still, I do wonder, though, if before this, in the weeks leading up to before this, in a premeditated way, if he would have driven around like the boogeyman, like you say.
Right, Gisela. I want to play a clip here where he is driving around, but this time he's got a co-pilot there. He's got...
I don't know if I said any more after that, did I? Did I say more things? Hold on. We're looking. Oh, maybe. Can't remember.
13th. What is he going to say? Tell me, when it comes to the cell phone evidence, we know he turned it off when he was on his campus, and then it doesn't come back on until he departs from Moscow and he winds up in the town just south of it. How's he going to explain that one?
Well, you can't explain it, and this is the case if you are going to file a notice of alibi. There has to be some specificity that addresses the gaps in the forensic cell phone evidence. But Julie, I think sometimes lawyers fall in the trap if it's a death penalty case. And I've been there. You want to do everything you can when you have a case with the ultimate punishment to go the extra mile, because that case is going to be reviewed by every appellate court in the state of Idaho. Then it's going to be reviewed federally. It inevitably, before there's an execution, will go to the Supreme Court. But sometimes I think...
I'm going to pause for a second. Someone says, what was he packing in his Ziploc bag, in those Ziploc baggies? Well, apparently his trash. I think he was separating his trash from his family's trash to try and hide the DNA evidence, right? Okay, continuing on.
People forget that your client is not only cloaked in innocence throughout this process, but you need to make sure he's cloaked in common sense. So, this is a pleading that I'm scratching my head that I think is going to have unforeseen negative consequences with this defense, because the defense is the car did it, I didn't, ain't gonna fly in Idaho or anywhere else.
No, that is weak as it gets. And I wondered, Greg, does this indicate to us if we're getting closer to a plea?
Well, I don't think so, because if you're getting closer to a plea, why jump through that procedural hoop? And I think this is one of those cases, when you have, and I've had serial killers, it's hard for the prosecution to come at you with a plea that you would consider unless you take death off the table. So I don't see any signals that they're reaching that type of serious discussion right now. And because of these victims, these vibrant, vital college students, I don't think you could get all four victims' families on board to come up with an acceptable plea.
That was the little bit that I talked about there, but Bryan Kohberger, and then earlier you saw perhaps the the segment that I had on the Long Island serial killer, otherwise known as Rex Heuermann. So if you missed any of those updates, I hope you'll either watch the replay of the stream. That would be what to do, yes, depending on where you're watching this, whether this is in the video section, or I'll link the live stream for you in the description box if you are watching the video. Okay, so, well, that's that, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm still waiting to hear from District Attorney Michael Allen and Howard and the team there, and as soon as I have the thumbs up that I can release that full interview, because I always send it to all my guests. I first send it to them to make sure they're happy with everything and the way I've edited it and everything, and then I wait for that green light, and as soon as the green light's there, you will see it, okay? So make sure that you are subscribed, hit the bell. I think like 40% of people here, only 40% have hit the bell and put it to all. So if you miss notifications, it's because you didn't hit the bell. Okay, thank you so much, Kimberly. I really appreciate it. So make sure that you do that. And then if you see a live stream coming up or a premiere or something, click notify me on it. Okay, then it will actually alert you half an hour before and when it's actually happening. So I can't wait to show you that as well. Very much looking forward to show you the interview with District Attorney Michael Allen. And we had some very important conversations during that as well. And maybe some things that you haven't heard before. So yes, okay. Now let me quickly get to some of your questions here. Gamer Arnold says no video of Bryan entering 1122 King Road and no murder weapon. They have the knife sheath, not the murder weapon, and there's that video that we looked at, which you can't say that's definitely Kohberger's car, that's him in it. You can't say that, but that surveillance footage we saw is very interesting because it does look like a white vehicle and it is making turns, and you know, it's kind of how they describe it on the probable cause affidavit. Same time frame, but yet, I mean, you just never know what's the true source of that. Where did it come from? Is that really him? We don't know. But if it is, then damn, that will be more evidence, you know. But yes, of course, no murder weapon and a circumstantial case at this point. That knife sheath, though, whoa, quite something, huh? So I hope that you guys have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend ahead. I will be seeing you. Don't you worry. We've got lots to do and lots to talk about. And thank you so much, mods, for everything. Really appreciate all the support. Couldn't do this without my PR manager, without my team, without all of you. You make it possible. So thank you so, so much. And thank you, Grizzly Cat. Really appreciate that. All right, guys, I'm going to love and leave you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.